Welcome, everybody. My name's Chris Turner, head of go-to-market at TOUGHBOOK Europe. And I'm joined today by James Weaver from Cradlepoint, part of Ericsson. We're going to be talking to you about 5G and the emergence of 5G in the US and the European region.
It's great to be with you today, Chris. My name is James Weaver. I work for Cradlepoint, which is a division of the part of Ericsson. And I'm responsible for product marketing at Cradlepoint. And the cool thing about my job is I talk to customers and I work with solutions all day. And I tried to meld the two together. And it's a lot of fun because there's a lot of really interesting things customers are doing today. So hopefully we can share some of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we plan to pick your brains, to be honest, James. And obviously, you joined us recently in the UK, and you gave a presentation at our TOUGHBOOK Innovation Forum, and that's really what we wanted to talk to you about in more detail and take your opinion on 5G in the marketplace today.
That's great. Let's get into it. There's a lot to talk about.
So obviously you spoke recently at a TOUGHBOOK event in the UK, and one of the topics you were covering for us was 5G and the emergence of 5G in the marketplace. And obviously you're coming from a perspective of I guess living and working in the US. And could you talk to us a little bit about what's happening from a 5G perspective more recently in the US market?
Yeah. So it's really been an interesting transition. So, late 2018, early 2019 is really when this whole kind of noise around 5G started to come into the market, and press started to pick it up, and carriers started to market it, really kind of taking it from a performance standpoint that says, hey, if this is your download speeds today, just look what it's going to be tomorrow. And really the whole vision of 5G hasn't changed, and that is that there will be much faster download speeds, better upload speeds, much lower latency for many applications that require low latency, and that there would be greater support of IoT, and that there's something called network slicing, which would allow a person to really have kind of sole ownership of a piece of bandwidth. And that vision is still in place. However, what happened was carriers and some of us vendors, we really got excited about it, and we started to really put the end vision out there, not really realizing that it's going to take a little bit of time to build out the infrastructure. And in particular, there's really today three segments of 5G. There's this low band that you and I have used for years, and it travels a long way, 50 kilometers or more, and it's great, but it doesn't carry a lot of bandwidth. And so then there's this top end spectrum, which is sometimes called millimeter wave or high capacity or high band. And that is using millimeter wave lengths. And it's fantastic for capacity, but it doesn't travel very far. In fact, storms and leaves and things like that can kind of get in the way. So in the US, at least, certain carriers start to build that out. And we're like, oh my goodness, when we get this, we can do anything. Mm-hmm. And really underestimated how much infrastructure it would take. And so what happened was carriers across the world, and particularly the US, who had kind of focused on that high band, said, hey, we got to build this mid-band area, which is kind of this sweet spot between capacity and propagation. And they did. And we were kind of surprised. We're like, yeah, it's going to take you a long time. But they have. They paid for the spectrum, paid millions of dollars. Outside of the US, most carriers had kind of already started in that mid-band. Mm-hmm. And so what happened was, while it was being built out, consumers who had handsets got their, they started to download, and they're like, this is about the same. And the reason is the carriers had put the 5G standard on that low band. Mm-hmm. And it really didn't offer that much. But go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think this is exactly what we see in the European market, basically. Yeah, the vendors, a lot of the carriers, the vendors coming to market with the technology, basically, like everybody was pushing for 5G. Most of our customers now, obviously, when they're planning towards the future, want to invest into 5G as a technology. But I think what we're seeing and hearing is that, yeah, they're not necessarily able to access those speeds just yet.
Yeah, that's right. And it's an infrastructure issue, right? It's infrastructure. So then what happened in the US, at least, is the carrier said, hey, we're going to buy all this spectrum and we're going to build it out quickly. And some of us in the industry thought, okay, we watched what happened with millimeter wave. That took a while, still not there. But it has. They build it out within a year and a half, 2 years. And cities that I go to, I'm getting 200, 300, sometimes a gig speeds in that mid band. And I'm surprised. I'm like, whoa, okay, this is great. And so now we're going back to the market saying, hey, remember those speeds we were talking about that didn't quite get? They are coming now. And so if you look at markets like Europe, for instance, a little bit different. Maybe they didn't hype up or start to build up that top band, but they certainly hyped up maybe what it would bring, maybe just a little ahead of where it was at. And so consumers are maybe expecting too much, but it's starting to build, particularly when you see countries like, South Korea. I mean, their average speed is 400, 450 megabits per second, average across the whole country, anywhere there's cellular. Crazy. And so, countries watch each other, carriers watch each other, regions watch each other. Everybody's going to catch up to those speeds. That is not the question. That will happen. The question is just when. And so the consumers in, let's say, the UK and broader Europe, they need to realize that it's happening. And so plan for it now. When you purchase now, know that within a few years, it's gonna keep going. And I track this all the time. And every quarter there's improvement in speed. So it's coming. It's just I'm going to catch up with the hype very soon.
Are you seeing customers in the US market taking advantage now, like in terms of innovation or different sort of ways of utilizing those speeds? Is that something that customers are starting to really sort of invest into now, and are they seeing the benefits already, would you say?
Yeah, they are. And I'll tell you, most of our customers came from companies that they had, or organizations that had some kind of innovative digital transformation project. They couldn't solve it with conventional connectivity. They're like, what can you do to help us? We put them onto LTE, and they're like, whoa, this works. It's dependable. Okay, this is great. And then they started to do more. What 5G is doing is just bringing that mindset a little quicker. So now they're saying, oh, okay, here's something I want to do either in a car or in a kiosk or in a digital sign, or, it's unlimited in terms of the things they're doing now. Now they're saying, oh, I think 5G can help us. And so it's moving a little faster. One more phenomenon that's really interesting is something called fixed wireless access. And this is where the carriers around the world have said, hey, we're trying to kind of monetize our 5G investment. Here's one way we can do it. Hey, consumer, you're getting connectivity at your house by bringing in a cable. Guess what? I can just drop something on your desk, turn it up, it'll hit the cellular network, and you're going. And so that's moving very quickly. And so as consumers start to see the power of cellular, it's gonna extend into the enterprise, and so the whole tide will rise.
That's really what we're sort of waiting to see, I think, in the EU region. Obviously, from a TOUGHBOOK perspective, the really interesting thing about 5G is the resilience of the network, and then sort of that with the speed, in terms of transferring that critical data sort of safely, securely, and quickly. So I think we're sort of watching it very keenly. Obviously, some customers have invested and are seeing the benefits of 5G already. But you think that now will start to gain momentum, and then naturally, then within a few years, we'd see those speeds, consistently throughout mainland Europe?
Yeah, I do. It's if you look at some technology trends, let's take AI, for instance. I mean, that is the most ridiculous steep hockey stick we've ever seen, right? It's just straight up. We can't compare ourselves to AI or things like that, but there will be a steady trend upward, where consumers will start to gain confidence. They'll start to realize, they'll start to do projects, and it will rise. And with I would say, in the next 5 years, the UK and broader, you will start to see tangible benefits that they haven't been able to see in the past. And that it just opens their horizon to many use cases that will be really fun for them to be a part of.
Obviously, one of the concerns will naturally be around security, and how do we make this safe, basically, especially within many of the marketplaces that Cradlepoint and TOUGHBOOK operate in within the public sector. So I remember you had some thoughts on security as well, and some advice also.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things just to consider. One, yes, you have to address security. You just cannot let it go. the carrier's network itself is a very secure network. It's really noted as the most secure wireless network around. However, we always say, if you don't own the network, you need to secure it. So even though it's going over the carrier's network, you need to secure top to bottom. We also are believers in this concept that's been around for last 7 years, which is zero trust. You start with no access by default. You only give privileges based on least access and to the application you need. We are absolutely believers in that. But we also believe in let's make this simple for folks. Sometimes people struggle with security because it's expensive or it's complex. There are a lot more options now that you can integrate. There's a term called SASE, Secure Access Service Edge. It's this melding of networking and security together we talked about, and that makes it simple for customers. So you think about more broadly expanding your presence to customers either through IoT devices or through cameras or digital signs and things like that, or kiosks. All of that is great, but it does, it increases your footprint. It's a math problem. The more that you have exposed, the more that there could be issues. And so simplicity is important. And the good news is there are solutions that give you both security and simplicity at the same time now.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? Because even the AI trend will impact this in some manner, won't it? Because obviously the more sensors and IoT sort of technology projects that are getting deployed, then the greater need for connectivity and security around it, because it's just going to underpin everything. So you can definitely see, like, over the next few years, there should be a huge sort of shift in mobility innovation in many markets, I would think.
Yeah, there is. And I think the issue right now is just keeping up with AI. It's moving very quickly, and security needs to follow very, very quickly. I mean, just a quick example. I was trying to summarize some sales survey data. We had surveys our sales force. So nothing too crazy in terms of proprietary information. I thought, ChatGPT could do this a lot faster than I can. And so I pasted it in there. And then just as I pasted, I'm like, well, this is probably not a smart thing to do. So this is, my data is going into the large learning models. It's like, that's probably not too smart. And so, those are things that we need to be aware of. And ironically, we now have a solution to do with that to help people like me.
One thing I wanted to talk to you about was in-vehicle connectivity, because that certainly seems to be an area that a lot of TOUGHBOOK customers are really sort of paying attention. Obviously, from a TOUGHBOOK perspective, a lot of our customers, their user groups do work from vehicles the majority of their day. Certainly a trend we're seeing in the UK market is organizations that are really looking to invest into that vehicle, basically, and almost create a sort of a connectivity bubble around that vehicle, so that all of the different technologies that the user has access to can link into one central source. Is that something that you've seen at Cradlepoint in across different markets, or?
Yeah. That's interesting, because we've in the last 5-6 years, we've created these office on wheels where, again, these applications are moving very quickly, and the amount of things that you can do with that in a vehicle is just amazing now. In terms of, like, we have customers that have 3 or 4 different videos going on, including body cams working off the Wi-Fi, including IoT triggers. When something is pulled from its place, it does something. So these are really getting robust. The connectivity has kept up with it. I think a challenge for some of the agencies is budget. Like, we can stick, for instance, 2 modems in a vehicle, and you can drive around, and when one carrier isn't so good, they'll automatically switch to the other and pick that up. We can actually switch to satellite now, right? So you can really have some sophisticated kind of what we call SD-WAN things going on, and really give a great experience to those in the vehicle, and actually those viewing things like video streaming as well. It's just a little more budget than what some agencies are used to when they're used to just like, I'm just going to stick a little GPS tracker in there. But the technology's there. It's just a way to make sure that we can maybe fund some of the things to keep our officers safe.
One thing that the team at TOUGHBOOK quite like about the Cradlepoint product in that area is actually just the level of visibility that we can give our customers. So we've been using, a lot of our team have been using and playing around quite a bit with NetCloud recently, and they're really impressed with it because, all of a sudden, not only can we sort of manage and control the technology in the field, but the level of visibility and the data that we get from it as well, in terms of how the customers, what their estate's looking like from a performance perspective. It's really, once you get into the detail, we're finding that customers are, all of a sudden able to make sort of decisions around the type of work that they send out to some of their user groups, depending on, who's working in an area of good connectivity, etc. So it's helping to shape their decision making in some respects.
Yeah, and we can give a tremendous amount of. We have utilities now that when you talk about the dual modem, it'll actually just fire up, pick the right SIM, pick the right modem, off it goes. We can tell you what cell tower you're connected to right now. We can do heat maps. You drive around the city and we'll tell you where it's good, where it's bad. Those are all things that really matter to agencies. Until we have unlimited wireless bandwidth, those kinds of things matter and seem to help.
Where do you see this sort of moving from now, from a Cradlepoint Ericsson perspective? Where's the focus for the foreseeable future? Are you going to continue sort of investing into 5G more on the security side?
Yeah, certainly security. That will be something we will always invest in because, from our perspective, we want to kind of combine that with the networking piece. And so that's definitely a focus. And then unleashing some of these features about 5G. I might have mentioned in that case, people often look at 5G from a almost a siloed perspective. It's either here or it's not, and that's neither one is true. It's evolving. You remember how long it took for 4G to kind of roll out in its full goodness. We're doing the same thing here, and so there's more to come on the 5G side. We've got something called a standalone network. So right now, 5G is mostly the 5G radio towers and a 4G core. You just can't switch over everything overnight. And so the next step is for carriers to switch that core. And when they do, we'll see much lower latency. And that's where, some of these autonomous applications will be really interesting. And then, just the ability to respond from a video perspective. Upload will improve. That's a video capability. And then this ability to kind of control your slice is something we're all looking forward to. So as that next phase happens over the next few years, that's going to be a lot of fun for us because you can imagine that you have something super critical. We might be able to turn up a slice for you. We can do this today with Ericsson with broadcast. They'll go into an area, do a broadcast, and they'll completely isolate the network and give them a slice completely dedicated for that broadcast and pull it off. So this dynamic slicing is going to be just really fun as we move into this kind of the latter phase. Sometimes people thought it was already here. Well, it's not fully here. We're building it out, and there's a lot of fun still to come.
Talk to us a bit about that slicing, because this is interesting now. So basically then you essentially, as an organization, you can own a private slice of 5G basically, and the benefits then I guess are around security, actually being able to control. And talk to us a bit about slicing itself and how it works.
Yeah. So slicing works both ways. I just gave you the example where you want a dedicated slice for really critical communications. And in other words, it is not shared. Cellular is a shared medium, right? Today, if everybody jumps on their cell phones, it's more congested. This is saying, hey, I'm going to carve out a piece for you. You'll pay a little more for that, but many of us are willing to pay for that. And so whatever your use case, you can carve out a slice. Well, it works the other way too, where we can say, you know what, give me an IoT slice. I just need to know if that door is open or not at the warehouse, right? That's all I need to know. And I don't want to pay much. And so you don't pay much. And so it gives us the ability to kind of discriminate between the kinds of services that we pay for.
No.
Now, that brings up a whole discussion around what's called net neutrality, which is its own podcast altogether. But that's what we really look forward to, is kind of paying for the kind of service that we want.
What will the role be from an Ericsson perspective? Like, would you be providing the entire solution when we're talking about private 5G or network slicing? Like, do you provide the infrastructure and then the service wrap around that as well, or how would you approach that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because it is, in this particular case, it is a bit of a coordination between the manufacturer, let's say Ericsson, a provider, and then the person at the edge, which is Cradlepoint. And so we all have to ensure we understand how the network works, because on the edge side, we're giving the IT people a lot of knobs to turn and say, hey, when you have, a call like this one, for instance, you may want this kind of a slice that is prioritized, or something else, email is not. And so there's some tweaking going on there. Then the carrier network has to, put that in. And so we kind of like where this is at, because we have ties into Ericsson. We're really optimistic we'll be able to make all three of these entities work together to make it seamless.
One thing I wanted to, I'll put you on the spot here a little bit, actually.
Yeah.
Obviously, customers in the mobility space right now, specifically customers on Windows platforms, they're dealing with, a lot of change in terms of technology innovation. And obviously everybody always wants to sort of ensure that they're delivering peak performance, because they're using technology in, really difficult and critical environments. Their users have to be able to get access to data, at any moment, basically. They're having to deal with the transition towards Windows 11 right now, which is obviously a big topic. Yeah. What advice would you give an organization, and when starting to look at 5G and the transition, what advice would you give them in terms of things to look for, or outcomes to try and achieve from moving to 5G?
Yeah. No, I would say, like any technology, you want to start in some form or fashion to understand some of these bigger technologies, just like AI. If you're going to say, I'm going to wait till this thing is completely secure and everything's done, you're going to miss some opportunity. And I'm not saying that AI is completely insecure. It's not. But there are pockets, right? It's a new technology. So the same thing with 5G is, if you're experimenting, let's say by putting a SIM card in your laptop, try it. See how it goes. Ericsson just rolled out what they call a virtual cellular network, where it's kind of routerless, and it deals with SIMs in laptops, and the cloud kind of takes care of it. Well, that's just starting. There's reason to maybe try some of this. Or you start to say, hey, I'm going to start dropping these modems into my vehicles and start to see what that does for me. I'm going to start maybe doing some advertisement in some areas in kiosks and digital signs I haven't tried before. So I think you try those. I think you do it, and then see where it takes you. And the advantage is some of these trends start to move forward, and you can start to get a competitive edge in your market. You're already started, and it's not something that's completely new. So it's the polarization, I guess, that we don't want to do. You want to start playing with these in many ways already.
Yeah, we definitely see that. It's funny, actually, because a lot of the customers we're working with that have made an early move towards 5G, to be honest, it is a conversation, because obviously 5G from a vendor's perspective, it's more expensive basically right now than it would be to sit on a 4G modem. Okay. Just to start with. So already from a customer's perspective, they're having to build a business case against that uplifting cost to say, we're going to achieve this additional level of performance or this particular outcome. But what we noticed is that most of the customers that invest into it, they might be doing it for a specific reason to start with. But then when they realize the benefits and they're seeing kind of like the return, the additional speed gets them, they're adding lots of different new tasks to the user group, and all of a sudden it starts to snowball a little bit, and they're doing things with the tool that they never even considered to start with.
Yeah. And I'll give you really one interesting example. There's a company that's in Australia that they go in and they are an employment agency for disadvantaged workers, which is a great cause. And they said, what would happen if we started to go all wireless? And so they started to kind of ease into it. Well, I'll tell you what they do now. They are completely wireless. They have SIMs in their laptops. Every employee has a mobile phone that's connected in such a way to their carrier that it looks like it's their business. It doesn't look like it's a phone. They use Cradlepoint routers in their office to run all their back office. They will go into a market and assess it for literally a month to 2 months. If it works, they stay. If they don't, they pull out. That is how flexible this company is. And it's because they went completely wireless. I mean, from SIMs and laptops all the way through to Cradlepoint routers. And for them, it's a business model that works, and that's how they beat their competition.
Yeah, that is crazy to think, isn't it? That there's organizations out there that are able right now to do that, to go to a completely wireless sort of structure right now, and quite a sort of serious industry as well, I can imagine. Like, it's not a risk that they would take lightly. So they're obviously very confident in what they're able to do.
You know, some of the points that we made earlier, which is with any technologies, with any digital transformation projects, you need to at least start testing it out and seeing where it's at. I think there's very few times where being a laggard pays off. And yes, it does require a little bit of investment, but it's good for everybody. We all learn. The employees involved, their resume improves. Everybody kind of gets lifted as we kind of look forward to technologies that are moving forward. Now, as it turns out, cellular technology in vehicles and other places, that's been around for well over a decade. So that's a proven technology, but its use isn't always proven. And that's where, trying a few use cases like the one I just mentioned makes a lot of sense for people.
So actually, your top tip for customers starting to, think about this is just to get started somehow, to make the move, to try it out.
Yeah. See how it goes. Just try it somewhere.
Sound advice. Well, thank you very much, James. That's been really interesting and fantastic insight. Loved picking your brains there, and it's really exciting. Actually, it would be interesting to see how things develop over the next few years now. So looking forward to watching closely.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. It's been a lot of fun. Always happy to work with great people at Panasonic and the TOUGHBOOK division. We build a little demo we're taking around different parts of the world that has a TOUGHBOOK front and center, and I'll just say it works great, and it's great to have this partnership, and together I think we'll see some exciting times.
Yeah, absolutely exciting collaboration.